Another K-pop group is suing their company. Can you believe that?
Crazy Rich Asians.
I don't think they are. That's kind of the problem. Yeah. Anyway, where were you yesterday afternoon?
The shop around the corner.
Yeah? And what'd you buy?
27 dresses.
What? Are you crazy? Why the hell do you need so many dresses?
For weddings and a funeral.
What the fuck? Hey, wait a second. If you were shopping in the afternoon, what were you doing after? You didn't come back until midnight. Where were you?
The apartment.
The apartment? What does that mean? Whose apartment? Don't tell me you were with that cute waiter guy. Don't tell me you guys did it. What? Was he not good?
Never been kissed.
Really?
Clueless.
Really? Wait, is he?
40-year-old virgin.
What? What are you talking about? How old is he really?
13 going on 30?
That doesn't even make sense. What the hell are you talking about? Are you right? Wait a minute. Are you?
Flashback.
Crazy Rich Asians. 27 dresses. 13 going on 30?
End of flashback.
I don't get it.
So catch me if I fall.
I think we all have a certain movie genre that has made a specific mark on us during our childhood. For kids nowadays, that will probably be superhero movies. However, as a girl born in the late 1990s, that was most definitely romantic comedies for me. From classics like Princess Diaries to every Katherine Heigl movie ever, the golden time of rom-coms has left a deep mark on my young and impressionable mind. That being said, they don't really make them as they used to. Why? What happened to this once beloved and prominent genre? Join me today as we explore the rise, the fall, and the possible end of rom-coms as we used to know. Before we understand what happened to rom-coms, we first need to take a look at their history. As Hollywood's treasure Julie Andrews once said, or rather sang, let's start at the beginning.
In the beginning.
As Hollywood's treasure Julie Andrews once said, or rather sang, let's start at the beginning, a very good place to start. Ever since the history of time, humans have used various forms of art to express their feelings and experiences. Stories have been found to trigger the release of oxytocin, a hormone that promotes trust and empathy, as well as activating the reward system in our brain, which releases dopamine, which makes us feel good. As a potent dopamine releaser itself and one of the universal experiences of humankind, love has been a part of our stories since the beginning of time. From Adam and Eve to the ultimate romantic William Shakespeare, love has been interwoven into many different genres, so why not comedy? The true beginning of rom-coms is not so easy to pinpoint. At the beginning of 20th century, comedies of manners took the first steps as early forms of romantic comedies. These movies had the very famous rom-com setup of a rich person falling for a non-wealthy person. First time, right, JLo? Then came the screwball comedies, most popular in the 1930s. Just like the baseballs that took batters by surprise by their movement, the plot of these movies moved in unexpected directions. Steeped in slapstick humor and fast-paced and witty dialogue, they put the woman in the limelight, making her the protagonist of her own story, which then became the staple of the genre. Important to note were also the sex comedies of the latter half of the 20th century, which focused on the differences between men and women. Male and female leads were often pitted against each other in fierce competition, oftentimes as professional rivals, eventually leading to the sparks flying in the classic battle of the sexes. Funnily enough, this subgenre actually led to research and the normalization of female sexuality in the mainstream media. The sexual revolution of the 60s paved the way for the radical romantic comedies of the 70s, when the topic of sex and love became more freely and straightforwardly discussed in rom-coms. The movies also became more cynical and philosophical, oftentimes discussing the very existence of love. Arguably the golden time and the absolute boom the rom-coms experienced in the 1990s, which then continued until the end of 2000s when the cinemas were starting to be overtaken by big-budget superhero movies. During this period, rom-coms were very successful,
raking up quite a bit of cash at the box office and easily making a mark on the pop culture of the time. And what about nowadays? Not really, right? But why not?
Why did rom-coms lose so much on their popularity and almost entirely faded from the existence? Well, let's start with the lack of recognizable rom-com faces. Think back, whether Julia Roberts, Hugh Grant, or Katherine Heigl and Jennifer Lopez. Back in the day, you had quite a large group of actors who not only had their big break, but also spent a considerable chunk of their careers in rom-coms. They were big sellers for the movies in which they starred. Who would say no to a movie starring Sandra Bullock? She wasn't a Miss Congeniality for no reason. She's a delight on the screen. However, all these stars have either grown out of the genre or moved to greener pastures, if you know what I mean.
And it seems to have left a gaping hole with no actors to fill it in.
That's what she said!
We used to have Matthew McConaughey, Drew Barrymore, Reese Witherspoon, and now we have Noah Centineo? He's the only modern actor who is best known for starring in rom-coms that I can think of. Even when a rom-com proved to be a box office hit for an actor, they don't usually stick around with the genre, but take the success and try to expand their acting talent. Take Constance Wu, for example. Coming into fame with the popular sitcom Fresh Off the Boat, she reached star status with the lead role in pop culture hit that was Crazy Rich Asians. Even so, instead of riding the high with the new rom-com, just a year later she challenged herself with a true crime drama, Hustlers. Or even my favorite mountain of a man, Jacob Elordi, coming fresh off of the success of The Kissing Booth. He took on the roles of an absolute psychopath in the drama series Euphoria, and a likable rich hunk in the dramedy thriller Saltburn, as well as giving life to a legend that was Elvis Presley in the biopic Priscilla. Such diverse acting decisions of the actors make it hard for the audience to associate their faces with the rom-com genre, which I think is probably the whole point, but makes it harder for the new rom-coms to lure people into the cinema on the sheer star power alone. It's also important to note the absence of rom-com filmmaking powerhouses like Nancy Meyers or Gary Marshall. Just like the movie stars, directors also don't stick to the genre even if they found success with it before.
I mentioned before how love stories not only make us feel good, but are also relatable. However, it seems to be a widely accepted consensus that rom-coms as a genre have become rather stale and unlikably unrelatable. Rom-coms are at their best when they're either stories with simple yet striking concepts that many people can relate to, at least in some aspect, or as complete fantasies that fulfill our urge for an epic love story. Nowadays, a lot of rom-coms can't seem to find a way to stand out and do too much in a way that's just a tad too cringe. I think Crazy Rich Asians hits the nail on the head and strikes the perfect balance between the two. Dating an insanely rich person is something most of us can only dream of, but not fitting into the environment and the family of the person we're dating is something that many people can relate to. A perfectly simple yet engaging concept that isn't derivative of anything we've really seen before. Yet its success didn't really teach Hollywood to give unconventional stories a go. Yeah, of course, why would it when they can just make another Bridget Jones' Diary sequel or She's All That remake?
You know what? You don't deserve me, you don't deserve my love, and you don't deserve my croakum-fish, you croakum-fish!
That movie sucks. While we're on the subject of He's All That, the reason why rom-coms have almost entirely disappeared from the big screens is because they've moved to the streaming platforms. Rom-coms were never big event movies. They've always been a staple of a girls' night out or a cinema date, something you can enjoy with a half a brain with some good company. But nowadays, both of these activities have pretty much moved to the home. Netflix and chill, am I right, fellas? Netflix has been especially excelling at it, releasing quite a number of new rom-coms yearly, sometimes hitting a goldmine like with The Kissing Booth and To All the Boys series. And the streaming platform's foothold of the genre has only been strengthened by the pandemic. Even so, just because the streaming platforms are making them doesn't mean they can't be released in the cinema either. So why is that exact thing happening? I think this particular phenomenon isn't a rom-com exclusive, but a problem of Hollywood as a whole. What has been happening in the last few years can only be described as the death of mid-budget movies. Taking a look back at the last few years, heck, just 2023 alone, there have been hardly any mid-budget movies being released. Cinemas are being dominated by big budget.
A budget? You're joking. I fucking love budgets. Honest, you got a budget?
Have you seen that meme? Budget? Seriously, you've got a budget. Anyway. Cinemas are being dominated by big-budget blockbusters. At the turn of the decade, we could clearly see a turn in what kind of movies are being made and which ones were popular. Iron Man in 2008 clearly set Marvel on the path that got them to being a cinematic juggernaut that they are today. And The Dark Knight from the same year showed what the superhero movie was capable of achieving, with amazing storytelling, epic visuals, and just being an overall pop culture phenomenon.
You wanna know how I got these scars?
Where are they?
However, even more than those, I think the movie that was responsible for the total shift in the cinematic landscape was 2009 Avatar. Before the sequel came out a little more than a year ago, it was kind of a meme going around where people almost entirely forgot about the first movie and were hardly able to remember what it was even about. Now, this is more of a testament on how bland the story of the first Avatar was, but visually speaking, the movie set a precedent. James Cameron's motion capture technology that he had perfected has since then been used not only in the movie industry but the whole gaming industry as well. The movie was quite literally revolutionary, and at a time when not 90% of all movies being released were chock full of CGI, Avatar was something extraordinary to see. I still remember being mind blown when I went to see it with my dad in the cinemas in 3D. I don't think people realize how huge this movie was when it came out, and this showed at the box office. Globally, it grossed almost $3 billion. $3 billion! That's absolutely insane! Compare that to, for example, Barbie, which was almost entirely inescapable for a good chunk of 2023, which only grossed $1.5 billion. Sure, Avatar did have a hefty budget of $230 million, but to this day, it's the most profitable movie ever. So, if you were a greedy Hollywood exec, what kind of message would you get from that? Spend a little bit more money to rake in the dough that's beyond your dreams. Boom! Suddenly, mid-budget movies, which were a safe choice, low reward, low risk kind of deal, were being made less and less. And it seems that only big-budget blockbusters are being made nowadays. And at the time when Avatar hit the cinemas, they were few and far between. Take, for example, June of 2023. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the new Transformers, the new Indiana Jones, The Flash, and Pixar's Elemental were all released in a span of 1 month. With the rising prices of tickets, your average viewer isn't going to see all of them, let alone spend the same amount of money on one silly little rom-com. I'm sure some of you don't even know that in that same month, a rom-com called No Hard Feelings was also released. With a tiny budget of 45 mil, it barely earned twice that amount, which actually made it a flop because, fun fact, as a good rule of thumb, a movie should be able to earn back 2.5 times the amount of its budget. The questionable morals of a 32-year-old adult woman being paid to date a 19-year-old by his parents probably had something to do with the poor box office gross, but that's beside the point. The point is that mid-budget movies are being buried by a slew of big-budget blockbusters, and rom-coms were hit especially hard. And the spectacular flop of How Do You know certainly didn't help their case. The 2010 rom-com, boasting quite a few recognizable faces like Reese Witherspoon, Paul Rudd, Owen Wilson, and Jack Nicholson, had an overinflated budget of $120 million, but was able to gross back only 48 mil. It was such a big office flop that it had a big role in destroying the genre, with both its main actress and the entire studio and distributor swearing off the genre entirely. So, is this it? Is this really the end of rom-coms? I don't know. In all seriousness, even though the future might seem bleak, I don't think it's completely hopeless. If there is one good thing coming out of the recent outings in the genre, then it's the diversification of the stories being told. For too long has the genre been dominated by straight white middle class. We're finally starting to see stories of other cultures, races, and sexualities being told. And despite there being some duds, I'm looking at you, you big loser. And what even was this movie? My 80-year-old grandma could have written a better script. Noah, dear, change your agent, seriously. As I was saying, despite there being some duds, I think the genre can still offer some refreshing concepts and engaging stories. And the cinema is bound to start changing after the disastrous box office year that was 2023. So who knows? We might live to see another golden age of rom-coms sooner or later. And until then, we still have Hallmark.
Hi critters, I hope you've enjoyed this video. While editing, I noticed I, of course, forgot to film the outro, so here I am. Before I go, I just wanted to say that not everything is so bleak. Since filming this, I've seen Anyone But You, and it gave me hope for rom-coms as a whole. Despite not being a perfect movie, it did have the same feel as the 2000s rom-coms. Personally, my biggest problem with rom-coms is that recently the movies from this genre had a lot of drama and a lot of rom, but not enough com, if you know what I mean. And this movie made me laugh out loud a couple of times. And for all of you who are kind of bored with the genre, I recommend you give the movie Look Both Ways a try. It has a really interesting concept. It tells the story of Natalie, who takes a pregnancy test after having sex with her best friend. Then we follow Natalie's story and see how her life would have unfolded in both scenarios, whether the pregnancy test was positive or negative. It takes a very interesting approach to the topic of life-changing events, promoting the message of making do with what you have and finding happiness with your life and the choices you've made. It's a really heartwarming movie, and Lily Reinhardt is absolutely amazing in it. So give it a watch. And if you liked what you saw here today, please give me a like, hit that subscribe button, because I have many more videos planned for you guys. If you have any recommendations, I don't know why I said it so weird, but if you have any recommendations for what I should talk about next, chime off in the comments below, and until next time, catch me in the galaxy next door. Au revoir!